Welcome to Simply Caroline, a podcast dedicated to women empowerment where we will discuss a bunch of different subjects such as life, parenting, love, business, money, relationships, healing, recovery, addiction, entrepreneurship, and so much more. A podcast I'll do my best to keep simple, fun, and relatable and bring you tools to help you better your life. So thank you for being here. And here's your host, myself, Caroline Blanchard. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Thank you for being with us again this week. I have a really dear person with us today, Laura Luckhurst. How are you?
I'm fantastic, Caroline. Thank you.
So I met Laura not too long ago, actually, and then we bonded very fast over a project that she was doing that is absolutely gorgeous, a children's book. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's the first time we're talking about a children's book on this podcast, but wait till you hear all the history behind that children's book. So, Laura, what's the book about?
Well, it is actually about, the title of the book is the Moon a Balloon? And I'll try to get it in the frame there. It is about a little girl, my daughter, and her puppy. And they look up at the sky and they think, what if the moon is a balloon? And if that were the case, all of the planets in our solar system, they have lots of moons. And what if they were balloons? And what type of party would you have if that were the case and you invite all the planets to your house to have this party? And
Yeah, and
it was a
sorry.
really neat way to, that's okay. No, it's a neat way to educate. And I learned a lot about all the different moons on each planet. And NASA kept changing their mind for Jupiter while I was writing this book as well, which is kind of a funny story. But no, it was a really neat process to just kind of come up with the idea for it, and it's a really fun book. So.
And you're an amazing drawer. Is that the term that we say in English? Drawer? No, illustrator.
Illustrator, I suppose. When it comes to children's books, it's illustrator. But thank you very much. No, I've always loved to draw, and I've always wanted to share my art with the world and let everybody kind of see the different style and appreciate it. I love seeing any artists whenever I go to a museum or even in my daughter's children's books to kind of flip through and kind of just wonder, how did the illustrator come to this? What was their history that brought them to the stylization, and to decide that choice of line and work and color to actually get the story across. And there are so many children's books out there that have the writer and an illustrator, and it's a partnered way of writing a book. And it was really fun to actually do both this time around and just kind of make it all mesh together and have completely my style in it. So
Yeah, and there's so many different things here I want to touch in, but I want to let you know first that as an adult, I learned reading your book. I was actually telling that to friends, like, that there's different moons, and they were like, what? There's more than one moon? So thank you, Laura.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
You
No, it was
educated me as well.
well, it was so neat looking up the different types of moons and their sizes, and I still don't know how they count them, but that'll be for another book, I think.
Exactly, because that's the first of a series, right?
This is the first of I believe I'm going to turn it into a series. I haven't fully decided yet, but for now, this is definitely one of many children's books to come. So
Awesome. Yeah, so there's one thing that the first thing I'll touch is that you self-published that book. Congratulations.
thank you.
But you didn't grow up thinking I want to publish a book, because you have a very different background, like business-wise, right?
I do. It's my history of work is I'm kind of a Jane of all trades, or of many trades. When I went to university soon after high school, I took a bit of a break, and then I took a certificate program in Richmond, British Columbia, called Interdisciplinary Design Studies, or IDDS. And it's basically dipping your toes in all the fields of design and art to kind of figure out, if you already know you're artsy, what field would you really like work well in? And I decided in that 1-year program that I loved color theory. So, and that is just the psychology behind color. You see a color, and what is that immediate feeling that it brings to you? And just to work with that, and then have that be a really big inspiration on any of my future pieces. So with that in my back pocket, I graduated university, and then I proceeded to work at Boeing Canada for 4 years. And I was in administration for 4 years there. And that was a really incredible experience as well, just being surrounded by airplanes and the software that goes into them to make them fly. And I was raised, my dad has been in the airline industry since he was a child. So I always grew up with some knowledge of airplanes, but it was really nice to be enveloped in it and learn so much and be a part of some of the software design and the experience. And then after that, during that time, I met my husband, and we decided after about 4 years of living in Vancouver to move to the South Okanagan here in British Columbia and run his family business, which was a winery. And we ran the family business for about 8 years. And it was an incredible experience. I didn't know, going from airplanes to wine was shocking. When I first, my
it's
first
both
day,
flying, no?
yeah, well, right. Well, when I first arrived at the winery, I did not know the difference. I didn't know if a Chardonnay was a red or a white, what a Pinot Noir was, and so it was amazing. Through osmosis, you learn and just enjoy every bit of it. And we were successful at actually getting our winery to #1 in Canada back in 2018. It was really cool. And
Congratulations.
thank you. And in, I believe it was, we sold the winery in, I think it was late 2018. And my husband stayed on as a consultant for a couple of years. And we've just kind of been enjoying life still in the Okanagan. And it's been such a rush. And in our downtime, though, I always tried to find time to be creative, whether it be just doing a small sketch or doing a custom piece for a friend. It was never anything to make money off of or anything. It was always just a passion. When we had the winery, though, I actually did host paint night there because we already had the venue. Like, hey, put your heads together, let's do both. And we did that for a couple of seasons, and that was really successful. Otherwise, though, I did a small bit. I tried to have my own little comic book series on Instagram, and that went quite well for a couple of years. But I was finding that it was quite draining because I was coming up with weekly content and always trying to find a for-sale feature that made everybody laugh and wasn't too inappropriate. Children could see it, and it wouldn't be one of those like, oh, shade your eyes. So that was fun. But then again, it also kind of just fizzled out a little bit, just being that it was fun for its time, but it just didn't give you that warm, fuzzy feeling that, like, no, that's not why I love art anymore. And so I actually took a break from the comic book series to draw a children's book for my daughter, and only for my daughter. It was a My Little Pony themed book, and that I couldn't publish because of serious copyright issues. But my daughter has always loved My Little Pony, and I was braiding her hair one night, and she starts telling me the story on, oh, mommy, I was watching the My Little Pony show, and I just wished so much that I could be a part of their group. I want to turn into a pony. And she just, without even thinking about it, was just telling me this amazing story. And I'm braiding her hair, making all these mental notes like, all right, oh, that's a really good idea. And I realized the whole story itself had a really beautiful layout. So after she went to bed, I sat down in my office and I wrote a story and spent 4 months drawing this book for her. And I sent it off to just an online website that just puts books together for you, just piecemeal. And they printed this one book for me, and that was her birthday present that year. And it was such an amazing feeling to put all of your passion and everything you work for into, well, my iPad, that's what I used to draw, and have it printed and actually be a physical copy. And my daughter's face when she opened it up, she went, "Am I a pony?" And it was just, I'm actually getting all wispy from it because it was just the best feeling. And it's like, I think I figured this out. Like, that was so incredible. And that feeling you get to actually tell your story or tell a story with both words and illustration, it's just kind of like, aha, there it is. I found it. And thanks to the encouragement of my husband and my parents, my family, they kind of said, when I told them what I've decided, I think I'm going to write a children's book. Every one of them went, yeah, why haven't you yet? And I went, oh, that's a good point. Why didn't you say something?
But also let's pause here. And your creation is also a huge part of your mental health, how you keep sane, because you do have, you went through quite a few ups and downs. So let's talk about that a bit, because I want to put things in perspective that, creating quite often, we don't know why we're drawing, or we don't know why we're writing. We're just doing it, and it's a need to do it, and we keep it like in-house. We do stuff for our kids, our kids, our parents, our siblings, or whatever. But that's really also a way to express and a way to release, a lot of what we're going through day by day. And for you, that's pretty much how it started as well. You had the passion for design, but the really creation. So what made you go through all of this?
Well, I've always battled with one medical condition or another. I've been a type 1 diabetic since I was 4 years old, and kind of have to grow up pretty fast with these all of a sudden big medical things kind of being thrown your way. And so it was always that really nice release. Like if I had to be homesick from school because I could get the flu so easily, or whatever reason, I would be at home just doodling, trying to just, because you always feel, you don't feel good when you have the flu, but when you have diabetes and the flu, you're also trying to battle the intensities of extreme high blood sugars and extreme lows. And it's so much. So that was always very therapeutic for me to be able to express myself. And it was never, there's so many people who will talk about like painting abstract and doing a big splash of color and saying, oh, I meant, this is what I felt when I used this color. And I've always really respected it, but I've also never been able to portray it in my style. I've always loved the literal drawing, but then also just that feeling of completing any sort of thing that I've started. That's always just been that's like, okay, well, I've had this medical issue, but now I can do something, and I have control over this. So if I ever felt like my diabetes was out of hand, because when you're a child, you have hormones, you have growth spurts, you have all these things going on, and you feel like you have no grasp on your disease. And so to have control over, like finding something that you do have control over, is just so therapeutic. And then later in life, actually, when I was an adult, when I was 30, I had my daughter, and it was the best experience of my life. And every parent says that, but it is just so incredibly true. It was just, the day she was born was the day I came to life. And
well, I think because it's true for all parents in our own way, we're all becoming someone new. We're becoming a parent.
Exactly. And I noticed we were in the hospital for a while because of a diabetic, and she actually ended up being a little bit premature. Nothing too scary, but they just wanted to monitor because it was an amazing hospital. And So we were hanging out at the hospital, and my baby in her bassinet next to me, and I'm flipping through a magazine trying to figure out how to be a parent. And I noticed while I was reading this magazine that my vision was a little bit funny. And I've always been very cognizant of everything. With diabetes, you got to watch your eyes, you got to watch your fingers, toes, everything. And so I noticed that having perfect vision my entire life, and something was very fuzzy while I was reading this magazine. And I made mention of it to the nurse who was taking care of my daughter and I, and she went, "Oh, do you have an ophthalmologist?" And I did, and so they actually ended up releasing me for the day. And it was the hardest thing I think I had to do is A, walk after having a baby, and B, leave my daughter for about 2 hours to go to the ophthalmologist. And I went there, and they took a look at my eyes, and they're like, "Oh yeah, there's, it's a little fuzzy, but we'll watch it, and don't worry about it. It's fine." And I kind of went, "Okay." So I went home, and a year passed, and my eyes didn't seem to get any worse, but they didn't get any better. And I was still seeing the doctor regularly and mentioning it. But I just didn't like how the doctor I was seeing was kind of very blasé about it. And so I decided to go and get a second opinion from another doctor, and he was going like, "Oh yeah," and I was like, "Well, maybe we'll do some laser surgery because of the blood vessels in your eyes." I guess I've been told, I'm not a medical professional, but when you any woman who has a baby, the blood vessels in your eyes, they expand and contract, and when you're healthy and you're non-diabetic, your body just flushes away any scar tissue that may build up. However, when you're diabetic, controlled or uncontrolled, your body just doesn't recover as quickly from any sort of damage that's being done. So with the vessels kind of going crazy, it developed this scar tissue that wasn't healing as quickly if I were not a diabetic. And as a result, that scar tissue built up, and it actually pulled my retina uh, from my eye. So I completely lost my vision in my right eye. And this other doctor that I was seeing, he was also being kind of like, "Oh, it's okay, we'll do some laser, but it's fine." And then one day I woke up and it was like, "Oh, I can't see." And I could see fine out of this eye, so I still had my vision out of my left. But it was very scary. So after several new doctors and several surgeries and incredible medical professionals all over British Columbia helping me, they were able to actually fully recover my sight in my right eye. However, it was interesting. The doctor who did my retinal reattachment surgery, he actually high-fived me, and that is not something that this doctor would do. He's very, very humble, and he's like, "Oh no, we did it. You did a good job. We're doing well." But when he saw my final kind of X-ray of my eye, and he saw that I had my vision fully back, he turns around and he just gives me the biggest high five, and I was like, "Oh, oh my goodness, okay, so it's good news." So, but going through with that, having gone partially blind, and the recovery process of this surgery, you have to be face to floor, like staring at the floor for 2 weeks.
Oh my God.
And you have to sleep on your face. You have to stare at, like, I knew every detail of the rug on my floor. My dad had a colleague who went through a very similar surgery, and she actually had a mirror that made it so she's staring at her lap but could watch TV. So that was a blessing. Anyways, that all said and done, though, I had a lot of time to think and go through all of the emotions. I was grateful that we're getting my sight back and grateful that I have these doctors. But what if? Like, just what if it doesn't work? And it's so easy to spiral and go down that really scary journey and think, I need my eyes. Well, everybody needs their eyes, but I draw. How will I draw if I can't see? What if this happens to my other eye? All the emotions. And I just thought, oh man, I really wish I had done more creatively. And I'd already done so much. And I think everybody says that you can do absolutely everything beyond, and it still won't be enough. But this was just something that's like, okay, if this gets better, it's time to get real with my passion and what I'm naturally good at, but what I naturally enjoy. And that was the big inspiration of just getting back to life. And it was just so, yeah, there's so many things and emotions that go through it with it all. So, uh, and then to top it all off, about a year later, it was discovered that I had osteoarthritis in my left hip that was so bad that they were fitting me for a wheelchair. And it was just like, nobody say it's not going to get any worse, okay? And I was fortunate enough to actually find doctors who could help me. And I actually ended up having a total hip replacement in 2020. Exactly. It was weird. And they had no idea. It's that one joint, nowhere else. And it was like, what did I do? I did ballet, but I don't think I never fell. And they just go,
And
they
that's a
have
big
no idea.
surgery.
It was massive. That recovery was intense. But that one was actually really interesting because that helped spark some creativity. I was still doing my comic at the time. And so I was able to do goofy doodles while I was on my pain medication. Because my husband would tell me that I was talking really funny when I had to take my pain meds. He's like, you should draw something while you're on this. And I was like, oh, okay. And he handed me my iPad. And I drew this ridiculous drawing of me driving a cloud car in the sky with a rainbow steering wheel with glitter shooting out the back of it. And I guess they were really good paint meds. I'm not sure, but it was very amusing. Yeah, so you created all forms. So
Well, let's go get the good and everything, and be productive when you can. You have to know what are your productive moments and just dig in it.
And I'm glad my husband could tell because I was just sitting there staring at the television. I don't know what I was doing. He's like, you should draw. So.
Well, also, I think because probably your creative side was also bringing some kind of normality back into you. And, whether you were drawing while on pain medication or not, that's not the point. It's just really creating also brings back, to the roots because you're really a creator. So
exactly.
And, what I want to point out in your story as well is because you're talking about it very lightly, that you had two big events, and I know you had more, but those two that you just mentioned, losing half of your sight is not a small thing. And then having a hip replaced is not a small thing. And, not to mention you're not 80. So at 80, it's something that you may find more normal, but in your 30s, it's not something that you find that normal. And you always kept the positive perspective in everything. And, you chose to see what is this bringing me instead of, what am I losing? And I think that that's a good lesson in life in general, to focus on what you have instead of focus on what you're losing. Because for me, you're talking about half of your sight. And I had to breathe because it created panic in me because I just imagined for a second not seeing, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I would completely panic losing my sight. And, don't ask me what I would be willing to lose. I don't know, nothing. But
well, somebody asks you that, like, well, if you have to choose between your hearing and your sight, which would you choose? And it's like, neither. I'd like both, please.
Exactly.
Thank you for asking. So, and we've all, I'm sure, like, as children, I don't know if anybody else did this, but you'd hear or you'd learn what blindness was. And so you close your eyes and you try to figure out, like, could I walk through this room without tripping over something and killing myself or any of that? But it's not, it was in my experience, because of course there's so many different types of blindness. But this one was odd because I could still see certain forms of light. So I kept telling myself, like, oh, it's not the type of blindness that I imagined it being, but it was so odd. But no, going back to what you were saying though, about finding the positive in the negative. The biggest thing was just life is such a good thing to live. And even when you're surrounded by nonsense and stress, or just the silliness that comes with life, there's always good somewhere. And finding that, I mean, I'll never forget when I found out that I was going to be able to get a hip replacement. That was equivalent to winning the lottery for me, because actually finding a surgeon who believes in you and truly feels that your quality of life will be better with this, rather than just it being a mild inconvenience, because they put you through a big series of testing, and he finally asked me, why do you want this surgery, because it's a big one. And my answer, without even taking a breath, was, I need to be a mom again. Because at this time, my daughter was 1.5 when all things were just getting worse and worse and worse. And I was doing everything in my power to still be mom and pick her up, get down on the ground, play with her, crawl, all of which were almost impossible. And so when this doctor heard my answer, he didn't even, usually they're like, oh, okay, well, I'll discuss it with my associates and we'll get back to you. No, I gave him that answer and he said, okay, you're getting a new hip. And I have chills right now just from the memory of his voice saying, yes, it's happening. And that right there was just, I jumped up and down, and I don't know how, without collapsing to the floor. So I think I put all my weight on the other side of my body, but it was just, I was screaming in my kitchen, and I don't do that. I don't tend to make very shocking, loud noises. So my husband comes running into the room like, what's on fire? And I'm like, my hip. So, and it was just such a great day. And so finding that, and then of course, getting through recovery, because that's another big thing that nobody talks about. There's all these elderly people who have these massive surgeries, like a hip replacement. They cut your femur in half. And that blows my mind still to this day. And there's people that are almost a century old getting this insane surgery. And all I kept thinking was, I've just been given my life back. My youth has been returned to me. Because having gone through the blindness issue, which of course I just learned is also normal for somebody in their 80s. I didn't realize this. I thought this was just for anybody. So what I'm hoping is happening is I'm getting all of the like 80s and 90s health issues out of the way now. So I'm gonna have the time of my life when I am 95 years old.
She's gonna be rocking and partying.
Go water skiing. Yeah, it's like, hey everybody,
go.
hold my beer, watch this. Like, so
there you go. But what I like that I'm hearing and what you said is, like, I know that for me, it took me so long to find my purpose, your true purpose. Because it's easy to say, well, my purpose was to be a mom. Of course, you got pregnant. That's not a choice anymore. It's not called a purpose. It's called a consequence. But, I was identifying so much as a mom when I became a mom young. So finding a purpose was difficult. And that's what I'm hearing with what you're saying, is that your purpose came to you in your recovery of both, events that you went through, and you're still battling with some stuff. But that also always confirm you had a dream, you had a vision, and now you're making it happen, because you also know that time is a luxury. I think that whether you want it or not, you learn that.
Absolutely. And I think that's the fire, that's the flame that keeps you moving. Because, if you think about it, if we're all given the ability to live forever, where's the motivation to do anything? And nobody knows their own personal number. Some people, don't make it to 20. Others make it to 120. But because you don't know that, I feel like that is a really good start. And then, of course, with the medical problems that I've experienced, that's just been the even bigger flame to just be like, okay, who knows where you're going to be tomorrow? Let's do this today, and let's get it done. And
But
that's
my
where I've
point
always
is that
really,
it's unfortunate to hear from so many people that it's when something happens or when we lose someone or, when we come so close to it that we finally realize. And I just wish we would know what to say to people who are perfectly healthy to really grasp this concept of time is not unlimited, and what you want to do, you got to do it now.
No, definitely. Well, it's unfortunate, like you said, the reminder of mortality is what gets you moving. But, and it is a fascinating thing. Anybody I've ever met who has experienced something like trauma or just medical issues, anything that really makes you realize like, whoa, I'm really lucky to be here. They're very, very motivated to just, okay, it's time to stop messing around. But then of course there are the handful of people who just born motivated and whatever that is, but it is unfortunate though. I would say for the most part, it does need to be something that is scary that gets you kind of like, whoa, it's time to focus on getting things done and enjoying it.
Yeah.
So.
And when we say getting things done, it's not just like doing what you have to do on your day to day. Is
No, not like paying bills or making the bed, but
no, it's getting your dreams done, because we are all important and all of our dreams are important, and you need to find them and really accomplish them. And that's one of
Absolutely.
the things that I love about you, is that you are embracing all of this. And some would say, well, you were given the talent and this and that, but it's all things that you needed to still grasp and go ahead with and accomplish it. So congratulations. And
Thank you
coming
very
back to
much.
this book, what
Yes.
does your daughter think about it?
Oh my goodness, she's so funny. I honestly feel like I need to give her some royalties because she's my little PR person. I she came home from school. I printed off some business cards that have my QR code that takes you to the Amazon site. And she's like, "Oh, Mommy, can I take a couple to show my friends?" And I was thinking, yeah, of course, just a QR code, absolutely. And she comes busting through the door. She's like, Mom, I need more of your cards. All of my teachers took them, and the school principal wants it. And I'm just thinking to myself, I just gotta send you around town, kid. That'd be great. So, but she loves telling people when we go to the grocery store, she goes, my mommy wrote a book, and I'm in it. And
wow.
thank goodness our local cashiers, we live in a very, very small town, so everybody knows us quite well. But the cashiers are so lovely, and they're like, you're in a book? Oh my gosh, I need your autograph. And my daughter, her name is Farley. She looks at me and she goes, Mommy, what's an autograph? How do I learn how to do that? So I've been trying to teach her how to sign her name if she wants to. So
that's priceless too, to have like the pride of your kid, to see that in their eyes. It's
absolutely. Well, when we actually got the physical copy of the book, she always goes up to people. She goes, that's me. And that is my dog Mutt. He's insane. Because he is insane. He's a terrier and he is very, very hyper boy. So
yeah. And there's one thing that I like about your book as well. Well, and I'm not going to give away what's the exact everything, because I want people to get it. And it's a beautiful book to read to your kids. But you also decided to put Farley with no colors.
did.
Explain the why, because it seems like it's a detail, but I feel like it's very profound that you thought about that, and that you thought, no, I'll let you say it.
Well, it was such an interesting thing. I love negative space. I think it is so useful to use it, and it can be overused, but in this case, I wanted to show in this book that you can be this person. And I colored in her skirt and her shirt and everything just because it's unicorn colors, and that's actually a nod to her, because unicorn colors to her are purple, blue, and pink. So her whole outfit are those three colors. But when it came to everything else, I left it colorless to make it so that any child reading this book or any person reading this book can imagine themselves in their form. And I feel like it helped diversify it a little bit and just let everybody feel like your imagination can be this. And it probably is already. And I mean, with like the back of the book, you can see Farley and Mutt are holding on to the moon balloon and floating away to go to this party. And I just want people to pick it up and just be like, oh, I see my daughter in that, or my child in that, any form. And I just felt like that really helped guide, kind of helping people feel like they can actually just be a part of the fantasy as well.
Yeah, and I love that because it's like there's no skin color related to, this, so any child can actually identify.
Precisely, yeah.
So that was a great idea. So what's in the future for you?
Oh, I have quite a few. I have several ideas of books that are partly in my notebook and partly in my head, and I want to get them down on paper quickly. I'm really excited though. I have been working with an incredible nurse at my diabetes clinic, and she got wind that I've created this book, and she has told me that she says, well, you need to do this for children who are diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And she brought out a couple of examples. I guess they do have some children's books for the families of the children who have been diagnosed. And it's interesting where the two options that I was given, one was very much like a PowerPoint presentation, and it's very wordy. And I was 4 when I was diagnosed. So if somebody handed me this book and I'd try to look at the little clip art images in between all these big words, I would be petrified. Because the other thing too is that when you're a child, you're looking at the picture and you're trying to get emotion from the thing that you're trying to learn, even though you don't understand. People are reading it to you, but you're also being poked and prodded with all of these insulin devices. And so I'm trying really hard to think about what I would have wanted to hear as a small child being delivered this information. And so I'm working very closely with my nurse to see if I can't somehow put together a children's book that is meant to talk to the child, to the patient. Because these books, because it's juvenile diabetes, everything's for the parents. So the parents can go home and read and stress about it, and hopefully their kids can't pick up on the stress that they're feeling or anything. And the kids are stressed because they're thinking, it's my fault. I ate too much sugar. I did something wrong. I'm being punished for doing X, Y, or Z. And I remember that feeling as well. And it's so heartbreaking to hear about. So I actually just met a mom last week in my daughter's dance studio. And she approached me, and it was so darling. She was like, diabetic mom? And I looked to her and I go, I'm a diabetic mom. I don't know if I'm the diabetic mom, but I'll take that title if that's what you'd like to call me. And she laughed, and I guess I noticed the week before that her little girl was wearing a diabetic device, and she was looking how I remember feeling when I was first diagnosed. And so I went up to her, I'm like, oh my gosh, are you a robot too? And she looks at me like, what's crazy lady? And it was a safe environment. It was the dance studio. So it wasn't like I approached her on the street or anything like that. And I was standing with my daughter as well. But I showed her that I had the same insulin pump as her. I'm like, don't tell anybody we're robots, okay? It's secret. She goes, okay. And of course, she runs home, and her mom was telling me this last week, and she's like, my daughter came in, and she's like, I met another robot lady. And I was like, oh, shoot, I didn't mean to confuse her. But she said she wanted to thank me because it was the first time her daughter felt like there's more. There's other people out there. And this mom almost burst into tears when she saw me, because she's like, you look like a person. You don't look like these horror stories that that just clinics or diabetes things online tell you about. Of course, don't ever Dr. Google, ever, because it will just tell you you're dying.
Exactly. You're always on the verge of dying with Google.
Exactly. So anyways, it was wonderful to speak to this mom. I'm hoping to actually talk to her again, just because I would love to get a fresh idea of what her little girl is feeling and what this mom is going through, so I can have a better idea as to how to actually put this book together and make it so that you're actually talking to not only a person, but a very young person. Because there efforts have been made, and I've read through most of them, and it was close, but not quite there. So that's where I'm so excited. So that's my plan for the next book, hopefully. And then I have another one up my sleeve that I'm hopeful to get on paper really soon, just because it is just so much fun. I don't want to get into too many details about it, but it has to do
No. You're gonna come
with
back to give us the details.
absolutely. I can give you one hit
one.
though. It has to do with weather and exploration. That's all I can say.
Cool. And it's not Dora.
That's not Dora.
No, I'm sorry, I don't even know where that came from. It comes from my kids. I think we used to play games about, like, you know, asking them trivia questions at supper, and they were probably 6 and 8, and we're like, name 2 famous explorer. And they're like, Dora and Diego. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you really think that this is it? So
I would have failed that. I would have been like, Indiana Jones.
Yeah, no, exactly. They were a bit older than that because they were learning them in school, but the first answer was that. So for now, like, my brain is like, when we talk explorer, I'm thinking Dora.
That's absolutely fair. No.
But you know, to come back to your book on diabetes, you know, go for it, because it's needed, and it's probably needed in a few different departments. But you know, when a kid is afflicted with a diagnosis, it should not be as tragic as we see it, because for them it should just be like, you're functioning a bit differently in one way, or your body is processing this thing differently, but you're still, you know, special, and you know, you're still a kid, and you're still, I mean, there's so many things that childhood come with, like dreaming and being innocent and not seeing the limits. And every single kid should see that, no matter what they have. So absolutely. I know that you're gonna do a killer book on diabetes, honestly. And then after, we'll bring you other subjects. People will call you like, hey, Laura, can you do one for this and this?
Oh, I would love that. And if there's the self-publishing journey has been an incredible one, thanks to you. And it's just been such a wonderful, eye-opening experience. I learned so much by getting this book together. And but no, it would be really interesting if there was ever a publishing company that wanted to help me explore even further with it. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Well, if you go, we can talk about it off air, but if you go with, you know, the medical field, I'm sure they have their own publishing companies that would be gladly publish you if it's medically related. Can I say that?
Something, and because I don't want to get too much into the medical stuff, because that's where, like, when you're a kid, you start trailing off when you start hearing all the medical terms. But it's more just the emotion behind it, and just having experienced it firsthand and remembering some parts like it was yesterday. It was 33 years ago, but there are some things that do stick with you when it comes to the diagnosis. I had my first crush was my nurse at the hospital. His name was Keith, and he was so lovely, and he was so nice. And I'm like, oh, mommy, I'm in love. And my mom's like, okay, you're 4.
I'm gonna marry Keith.
Well, and it's funny, I have never seen him since that day, but I remember his haircut. I remember he was just so nice, and he of course was trained to work with children in the diabetes department. But whenever he did a shift change, I'd be so sad. But I'm like, no, you can't leave.
Oh, well, because you know what, you're talking about all of this very lightly, but it is a huge trauma that he went through.
It does,
and I think it's a name that we don't necessarily put with getting a diagnosis, but whatever age you are and whatever your diagnosis is, it's a trauma. It's something that, you know, stamps you, and then it stays there, and you need to deal with it. And there's, you're taking it on the positive side of it. I mean, you stayed positive through it, but there are people who will completely fall into depressions after
That's a
going through
struggle.
diagnosis. And there's
Absolutely.
no diagnosis that you can compare, like, well, this one is worse than this one, and this one is better, and blah, blah, blah. You can't,
Oh,
because it's all into how the person lives it. And that is not,
absolutely.
emotions are not debatable. You have the
No,
emotions that you have.
exactly.
So, and I want to mention that because, some people will be like, well, she's talking about diabetes. It doesn't concern me because I don't have diabetes, or there's none in my family. But
Mhm.
it's really all surrounding trauma, how you dealt with something. And after your sight, that was another big trauma. And then your hip, and, it's one thing after the other.
The
So
list is long.
really, but getting back up from all of this and choosing to create out of this and be
Mhm.
positive, like, I congratulate you, and I hope that that's what people will get from it today, is that when you have, a passion, a dream, an obstacle, keep your chin up. And I know it's kind of like cliche, but keep your chin up and keep going, because there's always something good on the other side. And that's
Absolutely.
what you need to find.
And also know that, oh, I'm
Sorry.
sorry.
I was
Okay,
going to
I
say,
was,
where can people find you?
well, you can find me, I actually have an Instagram page. It is Laura Luckhurst Books, and it's all one word. And you can also find me on Facebook under Laura Luckhurst. And it's not a photo of me, it's a drawing of me. It's actually, I can hold it up. It's my About the Author image in my book. I was
Yeah,
struggling to find a photo of myself that I liked. So I drew a picture of myself there. So
there you
that's
go.
my.
There you go.
And so,
So Laura is showing us a picture of her in drawing, but your pictures look good. So
well, thank
that's
you.
your next step, Laura. I love your pictures.
Oh, I do love my. It was just I couldn't find something that was the about the author thing, and I was gonna get a hand from my dad, but then he got called away on a business trip. He's a photographer as well, and he's like, "Oh, I'll totally help you." But then I got to the 11th hour, and I'm like, "Oh, draw me this time." So.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So I will put all of Laura's information with the podcast. Follow her on Instagram, follow her on Facebook, give her your likes, and, talk about this book, talk about this author. It's two things that are like emerging right now, and it's going to be big. So be the first ones to actually get the book, but there's books coming.
Coming. They're around the
Yes.
corner. And you can
Laura,
get the book on Amazon.ca as well.
yes, Amazon.ca, of course, and Amazon.com as well.
All of the dots, yeah.
Exactly, all of the devices. Laura, it was such a pleasure having you on. And you know what? Keep shining like you do. It's amazing. And to everyone who was here this week, thank you so much. And I will see you next week. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you for having me.